I just had a question for Nandan.
Yes.
Okay.
It's live. It's live now.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Good evening to the second edition of COA Social Reads. And today we have a discussion on a book on Chandigarh, which was co-edited and also editors of the book. Rajnish Vatasji and Deepika ji are here with us. And the provocator for this conversation is architect Sunit Paulji, all from Chandigarh and from the Chandigarh College. So we can look forward to a great conversation around the book. I'll not introduce further than this because I think they will reveal the secret of the book. And the idea is that from this conversation, we hope to percolate it down to studios. Professor Sanjeev Singh is here with us from SPF Bhopal as well. And he has been also one of the initiators to see that the book reads of COA Social really percolates down to students, young architects. We're grateful to architect Habib Khan, who has facilitated and supported this. This specific program was facilitated and supported by Sapna ji, who is joining us soon. And so I think besides Chandigarh, it can open up a new dialogue on the nature of the city in India itself, is the hope we have, the various issues we are confronting. So before we get into it, I would request uh, Apurvaji Bose again from Chandigarh, this is an alumni of Chandigarh. So this is like a small Chandigarh reunion as well. I would request her to introduce our three speakers. And though Sunit Paulji is going to be the provocator, this I would hope is a freewheeling session, and slowly we will not understand or recognize who's the provocator and who's answering, because I think that's the free spirit with which Chandigarh lives, and we would like to see that in the next hour and a half. Apuraji, can I request you to introduce our three speakers and then Sunit Paulji to kind of anchor the conversation over the next 1 hour? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Before I begin with the introductions, I should thank Professor Durganand Balsavar for asking me to introduce our guests today. For me, this is precious, nostalgic, and probably emotional too, because apart from being so inspirational in their many ways, all our three guests today have been an integral part of my own journey in architecture. And seeing all of them together on this platform makes me smile and be more grateful. In the interest of time, I'm going to be keeping the profiles short. Professor Rajneesh Vattas, former principal of the Chandigarh College of Architecture, is an architectural author, critic, and Chandigarh's modern heritage expert. He has authored a huge compendium of professional writings and published hundreds of general essays, travelogues, and features in leading journals and newspapers. He is co-author of the book Trees of Chandigarh. He has also lectured at numerous prestigious forums, including Harvard University, American Institute of Architects, Illinois Institute of Technology, amongst others. Architect Deepika Gandhi is Associate Professor, Chandigarh College of Architecture, and is holding the charge of Director of Le Corbusier Center, Chandigarh Architecture Museum, and Jeanneret Museum as well. She was a part of the team that prepared the dossier for the transnational serial nomination for World Heritage for the Capital Complex Chandigarh, and has been actively working on the promotion of Chandigarh's heritage. Her other engagements include the supervision of the restoration of Jeanneret House, Le Corbusier Center and Canteen Block, and the recently established Sukna Gallery at Sukna Lake, Chandigarh. Professor Vattas and architect Gandhi have co-authored the book Sukna Sublime Lake of Chandigarh and have also co-edited the book Le Corbusier Rediscovered, Chandigarh and Beyond, which is the focus of today's conversation. Joining them is architect Sunit Paul, who has been the editor-in-chief of the premier national magazine, Architecture Plus Design, which is A plus D, for over 24 years. He has been in the profession of architecture, academics, and architectural writing for over 40 years. A graduate of the Chandigarh College of Architecture, he has been involved in architecture education and has been a part of various juries in architectural colleges in Delhi, and has also been on the board of governors studies of a group of a couple of colleges. He has diverse interests, having also authored a couple of books of short stories. He also enjoys painting, exploring culture and art. A warm welcome to all our speakers, and we look forward to a fascinating evening of conversations on Chandigarh and the Corbusier. Sunit sir, I will request you to take the conversation ahead from here.
Hello. Yes, a very good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for the introductions, Apurva. It was nice communicating, as I said earlier, to you. And a very good evening once again to the audience of colleagues, architects from all over, and most of the students also. Because I think I would first of all like to sort of really congratulate the Council of Architecture for this lovely initiative that they have taken to bring in the social, number one, on the online platform. COVID times have had a lot of negativity, but I think this is one of the positivities for our profession, that during this phase, the Council of Architecture sort of picked up the cudgels and came up with this online platform, which has become very popular now, and popular purposefully and meaningfully, I would say, for all the professionals, you know. So congratulations to the president, Habib Khan, to Nandan and the entire team of the council, you know. And then starting off something which I think there's always been a dearth of talk in architectural writing, you see. So I was very excited when I was contacted to sort of be a part of this. So it's a pleasure being out here. And then communicating uh, journalism, writing in architecture with the two stalwarts who are already, as the introduction said, have authored themselves a couple of books themselves. Professor Rajneesh Vadas himself has done a lot of work in writing, and he's also been associated with the magazine for a very long time. And so is Deepika, actually participating so rigorously in writing and the promotion, which I feel very good, because we need to have such platforms. So it's a lovely topic that we have, a lovely book, a very authentic documentation that we are going to be talking about today, conversing about, and talking about the beautiful city, a city of gardens, a city of concrete, a city of bricks, you know, a city of trees, Chandigarh. I mean, I think it says it all. Chandigarh has been left, right, center talked about as being instrumental, experimental, sort of in urban planning and town planning, and picked up globally, I think, throughout, you know. Looking at it, how the great master Corbusier brought forward this, was given the opportunity by the then government in the 60s, and brought forward this lovely sort of physical documentation in India, you know, for a modern India at that time. Um, and sort of so this is very exciting to be talking about the book. And so if we proceed further ahead, before we go ahead, it's just a casual question to both of you, since you are residents of Chandigarh. Professor, first to you. I mean, generally, Chandigarh, when it came up, as was conceived, right? And Chandigarh, what it is now. I mean, the late contemporary Chandigarh. I mean, how do you see it, the evolution process?
Thank you. First of all, very warm greetings to all the audience, to the speakers, and my heartiest congratulations to the consul president, Habib Khan, and the team that such kind of dialogues are happening. And I take it as a very great privilege and honor that this is the second book talk. And Chandigarh has the Chandigarh caucus has seems to have, you know, completely taken over the evening today. I hope Durganan will not hit me after the talk. I hope he'll not badger me, but in a lighter vein. So Chandigarh is as important as, and so by default, by as they say, a reflected glory, it brings a lot of glory to Chandigarhites like us also. Having said that, it's a very loaded question, and I can always trust Sunit to pull my leg in a big way. And but answering in a very concise and short way, a very loaded and a very sort of comprehensive big question. You see, I came to Chandigarh formally in 1967, and if not counting two casual visits to the town with my father when even the capital was just coming up, and so leaving aside those small boy excursions with my father who was an engineer, and coming here to study in the Chandigarh College of Architecture in 67, and then 5 years of degree, and then a few years in Delhi and other places. And after that, I've been in Chandigarh ever since. So it looks like that along with I always like to tell people that I came here before the open hand was created. So I have been having a ringside sea view of Chandigarh coming up, and so many tower of shadows, so much came up in front of me. Now, what does it all mean to telescope, the sprouting of the city, the growth of the city, almost like an urban complex full of even a lot of problems too. So how does one look back? And I would say, in a nutshell, the uh, defining theme is that the unprecedented growth which anyone could have envisaged. When Chandigarh was conceived, there were naysayers, there were doubting Thomases, Cassandras, who said that ये शहर तो बसेगा ही नहीं. It has water problems, which partly there are now, and this will remain a government town of gray heads and gray beards. You know, so that was a joke which Khushwant Singh said. ये हरियां झाड़ियां थे चिट्टियां दाड़ियां. It will be a city of government servants and retired old people like me. Now, it has defied every, you can say, prediction made about the city. So, in my opinion, if you create a product which is a good product, if we can use this term product, corporate term for a urban urban settlement habitat, a city, it works. It's a win-win situation. You give people a good quality of life, good amenities, people will come. And when people come, they collective group of talent, it further the rate of growth is exponential. So my answer or my defining your reflection on this is that a city which is got a good DNA, which is planned well, is bound to succeed, and Chandigarh has succeeded beyond any expectations. So, hello, Sunit. I can't hear you. Sunit,
Sorry,
hello.
sorry, I was muted. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I was muted. No, I was just saying, very comprehensively put across. I mean, the Chandigarh, the process, because once you have a strong footing, I think any city, it automatically, there is no power on this earth which can stop the flowering of it. The flowers can, the sort of the branches can be modulated in a particular direction, but once the roots are strong, that is a very true statement that is you were talking about. And I also regard, in fact, writing, when you're sort of looking at writing, it's like actually building a structure, because taking up a book, you know it's a similar process that you have to sort of really pick up. And you have to have a strong foundation. Then you have to have a concept that you have to evolve, and after the concept comes the nitty gritty of detailing out the plan, which is so similar when you are designing a building or when you're designing a book, or writing for that matter, you know at the macro level or the micro level, whether it's an article or it's a book. So, and then there come the cosmetics, and then the publisher comes in, and so the contractor when it's a building, etc., etc. But I just I thought it was nice to sort of understand the relationship of the two, because we have the book that we are talking about today, is something which I have cherished reading again and again. And since we were going to be talking about this book, when I picked it up in the recent days, it gave me a newer meaning, each time. And that is what the beauty of a good classical documentation is. Uh, uh, the name of the book that we are talking about today with the editors is Lee Corbusier Rediscovered, Chandigarh and Beyond. Now, we have different types of writing, as we all know. We have writings, books on monographs. We have philosophies. We have on the semantics of architecture. But this particular book that we are talking about is this is a very brief sort of introduction to the book. Is essentially based on it's an anthology of essays written by stalwarts in architecture, practicing and academicians, uh, who have collected their thoughts, knowing Le Corbusier, and also understanding Chandigarh. That is the beauty of it. Sometimes you come across essays which are per se generic essays, but I was so thrilled and, in fact, educated when I sort of went through it this time once again, and came across these authors, architects, William Curtis, architect B.V. Doshi, Raj Rewal, Rahul Mehrotra, Jagan Shah, and so many others, and of course the both of you also, you know, who have sort of contributed, and not only talked about Chandigarh, but also sort of talked about Lee Corbusier, how he sort of came, how the making of the city came into existence. And I think this is a kind of a book, before I really bring in further ahead talk about the book, but I think this is one book which I personally feel, if picked up academically, research is very little in our, to be very honest, in the Indian context, we have very little research that is done. And so this is one of those books which for the academicians, for researching, whether it's a studio work also, for an assignment or further analysis. This book, this documentation it's a wealth of its own kind in understanding urbanism, in understanding the different facets that go into the making of a city, you see, culturally, and the dynamics that is involved. To give an idea of the book, I think, Deepika, maybe you were mentioning there is some kind of a little introduction to the book that you have. Maybe we could have a look at that.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, sir, for the introduction. And I think, it's only fair. We are not being so pompous to assume that everyone who's joined in has read the book or even seen the book. So I would just like to show a little preview of what the book was and what we were trying to talk about. So I'll be sharing my screen, just 1 minute. So can you all see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Just a minute. Yeah, so I'll just shift it up a little. So this was the cover page of the book, and we were so lucky that the cover page, this beautiful evocative image that you see, it is actually the roof of the assembly building, and it was taken by William Curtis, and he immediately agreed to share it with us. And on the front we have this evocative image, and on the rear this very rare image taken by Professor B.V. Doshi himself of Corbusier holding the sectional sort of a model of the roof of the top of this hyperbolide over here. So we thought that it actually makes sense together. So we actually and it actually shows Corbusier in a new light. The title of the book was Le Corbusier Rediscovered, so we did not want to go for a very obvious kind of an image at the cover page, because we wanted people to see it again. Okay, which place is this? And we got so many queries that what is this cover page? I mean, we have never seen this because no one has seen it in this way. Just like no one must have seen Corbusier, lording over almost like a hunter tribesman with his, his catch in his hand kind of thing. He almost looks like that. So we found these images very evocative, and so we chose them for the cover page and the back page. Now, a little about Corbusier, like basically why Corbusier again? Why rediscover Corbusier? Because Corbusier is not one person. Just like, it's not just Corbusier the architect. It's about Corbusier the writer, the Corbusier the climatologist, the painter, the sculptor, and he does so much. And he, of course, the urban planner as we know him. And he himself could never decide what he was, whether he was an artist. And I think that is exactly what an architecture student should be aiming for. Or in fact, all of us, I think as architecture, as followers of architecture, you become adept at so many things that you shouldn't restrict yourself to one thing. So the more you go into Corbusier, the more you discover. And it's not just about praising one person or putting him on a pedestal and then just, making temples in his praise. It's just about discovering what can we get out of him. How can he inspire us? How can we inspire the future generations by what he was, what all he was. Okay, so he was like a sum of many parts, and that's what we're trying to show. And of course, this was his very famous poem, The Acrobat, which I will show in the end also once. Now, so many books have been written about him. Obviously, when he was a sculptor, and he wrote himself also, he wrote a lot. And in fact, some people say he wrote too much. But then that is how we know about what he was thinking. So there are already so many books about Corbusier, about every aspect of it. And there are so many PhDs going on right now in the world. I think if you start compiling them, you will find that even, from the largest of the canvas to the smallest of the things, like his motives, his writings, people are doing research on all of these things. So it's not as if you stop at one point. Not everything that can be discovered about him has been discovered. So you can always rediscover, you can see things in your own way. So which is why the idea of this book came around. Now, he has footprints all over the world. Now, he's one person who's built on almost every continent except for the really cold ones. But, actually, Chandigarh, why is it so special? Because of all the places he did not expect to. Chandigarh is where he was able to actually put together everything he had been researching on and working on all his life. Like this was actually meant to be his the Karam Bhumi, where you are actually able to now finally show the entire world what you're to unleash your potential sort of, and to show the world what you're capable of, from the smallest to the largest of like issues. So here was his chance to actually show the world what he was capable of. And so Chandigarh actually becomes like a crucible from which you can keep culling out as much as you want, because it's got everything about Corbusier, from his art to his philosophy to his urban planning to his smaller details. So it is something which the deeper you dig, the more material you will find about him, although he's been building all over the world, and he's got buildings all over the world. Now, there was this symposium that was held in Chandigarh to commemorate the 50 years of his death anniversary. And we were so lucky, and of course, Professor Vattas helped the administration in getting us in touch with people like William Curtis, Rahul Mehrotra, and Mr. Raj Rival, and all these people who are, thinkers. And we were actually, we had never thought of it that way, that we will be able to make it at such a large scale. but it became a very successful event, and we had so much of participation from all over India. And I think it was the first international symposium of that level which was held. So we were very deeply involved in it. I was the symposium secretary. Professor Vattas was our guide and the pushing factor behind everything. In fact, he ended up doing a lot more work than he bargained for, coordinating between everything. But this book was not just about the symposium. You know, like, of course, you know, at the end of every symposium, you have this perfunctory kind of a proceedings of the meeting or a proceedings of the symposium. But we realized that once you have people of that caliber on board, it doesn't make sense to just say, okay, then he said this, then he said that kind of thing or whatever. We thought, just like Chandigarh is the seed for so many more things to come later on, why shouldn't this symposium just become the seed or the thought behind it, you know? So that made us go towards a book, and we were quite lucky that in the administration we had people at that time who understood the vision and what we were trying to do, that we're not just trying to compile the proceedings or make a just a small booklet kind of thing. Okay, this is what they said. We want to take it 10 steps further now. So this book actually is not just a compilation. And in the introduction that we gave the administration, the proposal, the first slide was, this is not a proceedings of the symposium kind of a publication. This is going to be much, in fact, it goes beyond the symposium. So I think the title carries over. So this is the kind of literature we found. We have rare pictures by William Curtis telling his personal experience about working with P.L. Verma maybe. And we had, you know, these very evocative comparisons, you know, like we were basically revisiting his ideas in context of time and space. You know, for example, William Curtis compares the High Court with some buildings in Italy or Paris, or like in India, somewhere else or whatever. And then, of course, we went back, and like, why did we say beyond? Because it goes beyond the time frame of the present. It goes in the past also, it goes into the future also. So we culled out some essays from maybe people like Mr. M.N. Sharma, who had worked with the team, and also Professor B.V. Doshi, who had the good fortune of working with Corbusier. What were his insights? How did he see it coming back? And also, you know, for example, Mr. Rajriwal compares how, you know, the Indian way of building, how maybe it influenced Corbusier, and how Corbusier can now influence the Indian way of thinking. So actually, it was a very, we realized that we don't want to stick to just what they had said in the symposium. So for that, what we did was that we made sections. Even the symposium, in fact, had some sections, it had some themes, but we sort of again revisited those themes. We made them all over again, and we made these different themes on which we were going to structure the book around. So in fact, interestingly, Mr. Sunit Paul has used a very interesting word, which I am now realizing, of the designing of a book. Actually, we did design the book, not just in terms of the visual aspect, but in terms of the content. We actually designed it, as in we made these verticals. So we actually had these verticals. We, you know, went back to what was there in the symposium. Then we made these sections. Like, for example, one section was about Le Corbusier, the timeless in the modern. You know, like how, you know, like people assume that modern architecture is just about what is right now, contemporary, or what will happen in the future. But the roots are very strong. Okay, they go back a long way. So we wanted to explore that. So one theme was the timeless in the modern. Then Corbusier's imprint, India and beyond. Of course, I mean, it's needless to say that he worked first in Europe and America and then came over here. But then we want to understand the impact, like what was the impact of his architecture in India, which continued over here and beyond that. Then the next vertical was Chandigarh's heritage is world heritage. Like when the Capitol Complex got the World Heritage nomination, it actually becomes a very important point, because to make people understand that World Heritage means something which has a larger concern, it has a larger interaction with the whole world. So that actually became very important to make people understanding that Chandigarh's heritage is actually world heritage. And then, of course, from garden city to smart city. So in that, for example, we had very seminal essays by Mr. Jagan Shah, by Mr. Rahul Mehrotra, and also Madam Sumit Kaur, who gave an overview of the master plan and what is planned in that. So as I said, we did not just want to keep harping about Corbusier and Chandigarh, we wanted to go beyond. And of course, to give it that anchor, to give it that kind of a, what was the situation, how did it come about, we had this section about the archives, wherein we got a very rare article from Mr. P.L. Verma, who is the chief engineer and responsible for many, many things, and Mr. M.N. Sharma. So that was the structure of the book. And we, of course, culled out, I mean, it was not, in fact, it seems very easy to edit a book like that, but then we had to cull out all these visuals and hold the narrative together. Even the visuals had to make sense with what we were saying. So, for example, if you're talking about the garden city to smart city, you go back to the archives and then you get the proposals for the future, and you put it together like that it becomes a seamless kind of a thing, and you're able to actually tell the story as well as you can. So, and of course, we included some, there was some very, like I think 2016 was a very eventful kind of an year for Chandigarh, because we had this visit from the French president and President Mr. Narendra Modi to the Capitol complex. And this is like, I think, a very evocative picture taken right against Corbusier's enamel door of the assembly building. And after that, Mr. Modi himself chose the Capitol complex for hosting, where he personally came for the International Yoga Day. Now that is an amazing thing, because this actually is where the East and the West sort of comes together. And Corbusier's vision of this being a pedestrians plaza or a plaza for the people kind of thing, it actually got it sort of realized in that yoga day. Okay, so it is so amazing that Corbusier's like biggest creation, what he wanted, meets yoga. Okay, so that becomes such a rare thing. So we had full spread photographs like these also interspersed in the book. And of course, that golden moment when we got the UNESCO World Heritage nomination. Over here we have our chief architect, Mr. Kapil Sethia, who was there when the happy news was broken out. And so we have captured those moments also, like how Chandigarh, from being a barren piece of land, within 50, 60 years comes to a point where you actually get a World Heritage nomination. So we've tried to capture all of that. This is the inscription. And of course, in the symposium, we had these beautiful lighted things. So we put these very rare images also. So all in all, we were trying to go beyond just a compilation of essays. We were trying to show Chandigarh as it is, as it wants to be. And that was the whole essence of the thing. And we actually were lucky that we were able to, have contributors like, as I said, Mr. B.V. Doshi and Jagan Shah and William Curtis and Mr. Rahul Mehrotra, S.D. Sharma sir, and Sumit Kaur ma'am and Mr. Rajwal. So we were so lucky to have contributors like that. And that is how, and of course we added some essays. I mean, a lot of essays we also added, Professor Vattas and I, because we wanted to get the whole narrative together. And in the end, I would just like to end with this poem by Corbusier about the acrobat. Like actually that I think is the most inspiring thing for any student. I think this should be like our anthem for all architecture students. It should be taught in the first year itself, that what is architecture, why do we pursue it. So this is basically a gist of what Corbusier was, what the Chandigarh is, and what the book was all about. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. I hope you got a little overview of what the book is all about.
Oh, yes, certainly. I mean, that has been something very comprehensively. One gets an idea as to that it was based on the symposium which took place in 2015, commemorating event that took place when all these stalwarts were there and participated in that, the 50th anniversary, death anniversary of the master Corbusier. And after that, the both of you sort of took on your tender shoulders, if I can say that, the mammoth task of this kind of a happening documentation. And although, I mean, at one go, when you have described it, it looks so easy, because it is, and it has different dimensions that you have described. But it'll be also very important to understand at this level. First of all, starting from the basics, I mean, both of you, I presume, have sort of also authored a few books together. But how did you decide to sort of co-edit collectively this kind? It will be nice to know the process first, how you decided. 3 years is a long time frame, but it is very much in the end, you see it in the end product that we have. When you see the book, the illustrations, etc., but we'll come to that. But it'll be nice to know the process that was followed,
Should I be answering? Or,
Of course,
okay.
of course.
I think Deepika did elaborate on that, the process, because once we had this in our mind, this great, you can say, propelling force, that such a wealth of information, such a wealth of knowledge, such a wealth of insights, from the star experts on Corbusier and Chandigarh coming together, it was like a kumbh. I would call it a architectural comb of sorts. तो मंथन जब इतना हुआ तो उसको to let it dissipate or evaporate, it had to be needed to be concretized, and you can say preserve for posterity, or of course there'll be many books and better books, but it needed to be sort of solidified. So then fortunately, as we reached out to our experts, and we made it very clear that the idea of the book is not, we can send you transcripts of your talks because it will help you. People don't take at that level. You don't expect a B.V. Doshi or a Curtis to be taking notes. Many of them spoke extempore, and so we aided them. We told them that we'll get your your addresses transcribed. We'll send those, but we do not wish a transcribe in return. We wish you, these are like cues. Now that 3 years have passed, or 2 years, because the book project started about 2 years, please look back, please revisit your and restructure your thoughts. You are at liberty to change, and there is no sanctity about what you spoke over there, except that the thematically because the whole book, all the essays are interlinked with the sections are interlinked with the entirety of the book, and so it cannot while each essay is a standalone complete by itself, it forms a curry. The next link is to the connecting essays which make the section, and then the sections come together and form the complete theme of the book, which is La Corbusier Rediscovered, Chandigarh and beyond. So the only request was that don't stick to the theme or of your essay, and look back, change things. So we had to persuade, we had to cajole, we had to appease, and because these are all busy people, I think we devised, some people had a lot of conditions also, but we had to get the copyrights because so many had shown so many visuals, and in a lecture you can choose. As an academic lecture, you can pick up anything from anywhere if you give the credit on your slide. But when you have to publish, I think I'd like to share with the younger generation who would be coming up, who would be aspiring to write books. Remember, in books where a lot of images are used, copyright protection, copyright permissions and crediting is not easy, and you can be legally sued to the courts and all these. So you have to get, first of all, those star writers are busy. You have to ask them from where, what is the source. So get your permissions of using images or material intact. So once the material started pouring in, then somebody had, we had set limits about, a book can't be an endless sea. That 3,000 words was the idea, and about so many images. So also we got some essays which were running into 5,500. Some were running into 1,500. So, and no images. So, there is a lot of, besides the intellectual work or the architectural work, or the architectural capital that you invest into it, there is also, in certain ways, both of us, when we look back, we say that it was easier to write our own books. It is in fact more uh, testing to be editing or bringing a anthology together. And I think nobody better than Sunit Paul himself, who's been editor-in-chief for 35, and he must be getting raw material. So you have to resize, redo, rewrite sometime, get back to them. So there is a wheel within a wheel. So the process, and once you have that I would say the bottom line is how hungry you are for achieving a project. If you are, it was our dream to consolidate, to crystallize all that into a beautiful book. We were driven, and we used to be working late into the nights. There were two other researchers, who were my study in my house would turn into a coffee party at 12 o'clock. Our cook was churning out something to eat. So it became like a teamwork. And in anthologies, I can tell you, teamwork is very important. So I leave it at that because these is something one can go on talking. So the process, which was the question, was besides the intellectual structuring, besides architectural structuring, it was also bring it's like weaving a tapestry, in सबको different colored threads have to be woven together. It's a fabric in the making.
Well said, because this was no doubt a Herculean task, and a task I think met very successfully. So, that is one aspect, and also a task, as you described it, the process, it sort of entailed so much. And then to cap off it, to cap the whole process, the meaningfulness, to get that meaningfulness from a symposium, as you said, I mean, these people did, but when you're talking, it's something else. But when you are sort of have to get it documented, that is a different kind of a total sort of aura that comes in, you see, which you have to sort of really handle. And it's been the contents, I'm sure, as a result of that, did take a somersault. A symposium is something different you ask for, and there is a different thematic content. But whereas when I see the book, and when I see the contents, it's something very meaningful. The gradual process of architecture in Chandigarh, its evolution, that I think is a contribution which also sort of needs to be acknowledged here. How the revamping a symposium theme and bringing out, as Deepika explained earlier, that you wanted this to be a different type of a documentation and trend a new trend, sort of. And when I see that right from the beginning, the first essays of Doshiji, for example, he goes because he has worked with Corbusier, and I was there at the function earlier, and I was also there at the function when the book launch had taken place. And between the two, and you see the third time, the essay. You see, so the written word is so beautifully projected by him in his essay. The way he actually puts across the flowering, how it took place, the small nitty-gritties that he has sort of captured, in that. And so also William Curtis, that's another essay which caught my eye, that the way he has interpreted, apart from sort of documenting with photographs, certain buildings, his personal experiences, but he has taken it to the next level actually, and giving newer interpretations, which I think is what creative writing is all about, which is what critical writing is all about, you know. So, and I'm sure it must have taken tons and tons to get that from him, you know. And it's a book which is so very well documented with illustrations. It'll be good to know. And some of the sort of photographs that you have are of archival value per se. How difficult was it to get all that? I mean,
Should I take that question?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? In fact, we were very clear about it that we did not want to make. I'm not saying that books which have only text are boring or are not engaging enough, but maybe after being in teaching for such a long time, I have realized that visual material, we architects always think in a visual medium. So we were very clear about it that we wanted a book which was as intellectually stimulating as it is visually appealing. We wanted to have that anchor of a lot of visuals, yet not be a coffee table book. It's definitely not a coffee table book, but why can't we have a combination of both of them? Why can't we have good visuals, a good looking book, but with a lot of substance, okay, like a beauty with brains kind of a thing. So the most difficult task funnily became, because you have the same subject, you have Corbusier and you have Chandigarh, so you would have the same drawing repeated in everyone's lecture. For example, the Chandigarh plan, that Chandigarh plan made by Corbusier, would figure in everyone's lecture and everyone's essay. So what do? You can't repeat it 4 times. So how do you get three different versions of the master plan maybe? Or for example, some sketch of Corbusier, which is as relevant in the lecture of Professor Doshi as it is in the lecture of William Curtis or in the essay of William Curtis. Now, where do you put it? So basically, that whole thing of balancing the visuals, so how to choose the right visuals, how not to get repetitive because you're talking about the same thing, how to maybe find one drafted plan of the capital, one sketch of the capital, and then one visual of the capital, and then space them apart. So it may not be very obvious at first glance, but we actually, like, you have in a painting, you balance out the colors and the shapes and the forms. We put a lot of thought, like even in the dividers, like what kind of a visual, if there's a section on the timeless, so we choose the relief work of the modular man, with a very rustic kind of a look, which shows a very modern thing like the modular dimensions, but in a very rustic kind of a form on concrete and like almost like a cave painting kind of a thing. So the visuals actually were a very important part of it, and we spent a lot of time. I mean, I think sometimes if you maybe much more than required, we spent a lot of time in composing them, in exactly placing them where they needed to be placed. In fact, when we went to the publishers, Niyogi publishers, we had a proper dummy made. It was actually like a complete book. We could have published it right then. It was complete with the captions and the visuals and the size and the font and everything. It was complete like that. Of course, their designers did a brilliant job and they changed it all. But and even the archival material, we were very careful that we don't want to make it into like a sepia tainted, like a album kind of a thing, which becomes very boring after some time. We have to choose, just because we have a lot of visuals, we don't get tempted to put everything that you have. So it's more than what you put. It is also sometimes what you don't put in to a book, whether it is the essay itself or the text or the visual. You have to be very careful that you have to balance it out. It shouldn't become overwhelming also, but you have to find that right balance between holding the person's interest but not making it look like a coffee table book kind of thing. So we were very, I mean, it took a lot of time. The visuals in fact took a lot of time for us to shortlist and then to place, and then we would keep shuffling them. Oh no, this looks better over here, this looks better in that article or this article. And of course, as Professor Vattas was saying, the copyrights, because many of the essays that were given to us, we normally use pictures randomly. They are available so freely on the internet that we just download them and we use them in our lectures or in our essays
Mm,
without realizing that in a publication you can't do that. So
that's right.
that of course became a challenge.
And then you also mentioned, I'm sure, and see, when you even one glance of the book, sort of tells you the relatedness. I mean, you see the title of the essay and you see the illustrations. I mean, that is what caught my attention also. That you relate the two, the text and the illustrations, as you were mentioning. You also mentioned, by the way, I mean, the publisher Niyogi, and that just, by the way, comes to my mind. How difficult was it to get a publisher for this kind of a anthology? I mean, this is a kind of a documentation, not easy to get a publisher, you know. And also, if you could share, was there any role of the administration, Chandigarh administration? What was the role, if at all there was a role? I gather there was some role, because it's so important that our governments also realize that these kind of books that are so relevant and required, that they become participatory, in the whole process. Because no matter what we say, we cannot do these things individually, even if we have the passion, and the passion in the book shows, but that apart, it'll be good to know these two things.
I I think this is a very important thing to know,
Yeah.
because intellectual aspects and all those aspects, they will remain your dreams and your aspirations to to walk the talk, and to actually from a concept to paper, holding a physical book in your hand is a very long and very difficult journey. And when we set out on this agenda, we shared with the administration, and uh, the I would give all lot of credit to the top echelons of the Chandigarh administration, because they had supported us on the symposium idea. They had just called us and said, we want to do something big on this landmark of 50 years. Can you give us some ideas? And that's how we can put the so symposium. We already had bid. The administration had done all the expenditure. So having seen the you can say the huge dazzle and spectrum, and the big canvas that cities architecture could draw internationally. The the bureaucrats then realize that a city is also by itself a tourism, old cities, historicity, traditionally they are thought to be something that will draw international tourism. But when you have modern heritage, it's not very easy to convince the non-architect that it has got a big draw. But this symposium, if I may say, did open. They made it made them very amenable. That if the symposium can be sold out, then a book about it will also propagate the message of the city and the idea of Chandigarh and its place in the galaxy of architectural and urban design in the world. So we had a very supportive, you can say, administration. And then when we started this proposal of turning it into a book, both me and Deepika were honestly very sure that we would need financial grant from the book, from the administration. इसको छापने के लिए कोई it will be expensive book. No book, Indian publisher is going to say that I will spend so many lakhs and wait for somebody to fall in love with Corbusier and Chandigarh and buy it. It's not a a page turner of a detective story or a crime thriller, which will sell and make a lot of money for the publisher. So we were actually thinking that we will need. And the administration said, well, we can't commit anything, but you can start the project. Even to do a project like this, we needed two researchers to do a lot of, you can say detailing work, groundwork. And they said, okay, what we'll do is, Deepika was director Le Corbusier Center, that we will let Le Corbusier Center to be the adda for it. And she already had two research assistant. You can put them also to use of work on the book, assist you. Now, we were only given that much of support. And I'm going on record. We thought that we will have to again go back to them कि आप कोई guarantee दे दो buyback. The encouragement, the encouraging thing which I want to share with the would-be writers, the would-be architectural authors is, again going back to the city. If you create a good product, they will be a taker for it. If Chandigarh was a successful product, the book, when we finally put together everything, the the dispensation had changed in the meantime. Our you can say our guardian angels had also got transferred, and so there we were with a 3 kilo, 5 kilo of the manuscript, and we were wondering अब इसका publisher कहाँ से ढूंढेंगे. Please believe me, and it should be a note of great encouragement to all would-be writers that we made a list of 6, 7 top publishers of this kind of format of this illustrated books on grand themes, grand scale, grand spectacle, and we framed a very sort of a very a very seducing, very alluring proposition to publish this book. So we were trying to get someone to really take our baby and bring it up. You will not believe, I'm Deepika is there, and by the grace of God, we just sent first 5 emails. I'll not name the publishers, and within 2 days we have everything on record. We got a blanket yes from two of them. And they had no conditions that they will need a support from the government or some buyback guarantee and this thing. And we had two of them, and both wanted to publish the book. And one or two more said that we will, there were little bits and ifs and one. So I'll not go into all that. Within 2 days or 1.5 day, and I think whosoever, we both got the email at the same time we were sharing. It was like a aha moment, eureka moment for us, and we were screaming. And then, of course, we had found out that which was so they're Neogis, the top publishers of India, and very ethical people. They will, do you know, we are happy to go on record that all the royalties paid regularly on the book. The book has done very well, and all the royalty goes to the administration. अभी तक history of किसी सरकार का नहीं हुआ that two people write a book for 3 years, I mean, work on it, and all we actually have is 10 copies given to us gratis, you know. And but we were so over the top, we were so happy. हमारी ये एक एक ड्रीम पूरा हो गया, और एक हमारी, we never even bothered about it, and we don't have no regrets. But I'm sharing this story to encourage other would-be writers.
And
So
and, and, and also at the same time that when you pick up with the would-be writers, I would add to that when you pick up a mammoth task like this, and which is a wealth, as it shows, that work out a contract with the person that you're dealing with, so that, I mean, of course, the both of you do not show any repentance. But I think it would have been nice to be rewarded with something else also. But that apart, this is on the lighter
no,
side.
no,
It's,
actually
it's good to work out, I think, some kind of a formatting with the administration or whomsoever you are, dealing with.
yeah, we were a bit naive, and we were not knowing whether they will be takers or we'll have to go with a begging wall to the administration. Please buy back 100 books, 200 books, guarantee de do. So I think next book we'll do better.
Yes, I mean, this is what being is truly a fakir. Do not bother about the end result, just participate, you know. So, but one thing interesting also, I just come back to the book, the wealth that is there, and that's why probably you got a publisher so fast, as you say, is the structuring of the book. I was quite enamored by that, because the symposium that I recollect what I saw and how it was sort of it shaped off, and to the contents that are here, that it is Chandigarh is not a city that can be put across in about 300, 400 pages like that, just like that, at random. And no, nor is Lee Corbusier, because he, as the book says, as you gave a short glimpse in that presentation, the diversity of the man, is so huge, and it reflects somewhere down the line, in the city, that what he was, whether it was the open hand monument or the love for open spaces, and so on and so forth. There is so much. My question was that, the structure that you have taken up in the contents, because end of the day, it's the title which gives you a glimpse of what lies inside. So the title that I see here, Rediscovered, that answers me that there are so many books which are there, right? But each time when you look at something, it's a rediscovery. And then when the eminent authors sort of look at it, that is further adding a new dimension, to the whole process of the discovery. And then you also say beyond. But it's so nice that side by side, I see Le Corbusier, the timeless and modern, for example. That's how you start. But I would not go through it. And then I see Le Corbusier being talked about again. You see, the diversity of his personality and his earlier influence, which came to Chandigarh. Maybe if any one of you, if you could enlighten, how you brought in this beautiful structure and then you take it beyond, bringing in his love and the love. But it's also very appreciable, I would say, here before I really pass the mic virtually to you, uh, is that the compliment being given to our great the city planners of that time, the urbanists of that time, who gave that unfettered support to the master, to bring around this. Because without their support, I think there would have been a vacuum, a hollowness, in the fabric of the city. I think the little that I know about Chandigarh is that their contribution was immense
Yeah.
in putting a soul, sort of, and giving it the formity of the whole process, and I think it's very good that you have also delved going into looking into that aspect, you know. But it'll be interesting to know that how did you come across, because it's commendable, bringing across all the facets of the city, in this. I think this is very little documentation that you've done it, brought out, and yet everything comes out.
Yeah, I think as I was saying that the initial point itself was that we will not make a compilation of all the lectures. I mean, the symposium was just a starting point. If you, I mean, believe me, it was just a starting point. Many of the essays were changed. We, in fact, had to request people to change the track a little or to add some more details. And the structuring, I think we worked on the structuring till the very end, in fact. I mean, I wouldn't say that we started with the structure and we stuck to it. In fact, it was a very dynamic kind of a process because, for example, a lecture by maybe Jacques Priglio, it was first in some other section. Then we said, no, no, it seems to be fitting better in that section. Okay. So we had a outline. We knew that we don't just want to put them all together and just publish a book, and get it over with kind of a thing. We wanted that there should be these very clear verticals, which are of course not watertight, but still there should be some order in the book, because when you talk of Corbusier, when you talk of Chandigarh, when you talk of the experiences of all these people, there's a very likelihood of getting lost in the entire maze, of the whole thing not making sense.
Hmm.
And maybe Professor Vattas and I, both being academicians, we like that kind of a order in things. We both like a kind of a sense of, there should be some kind of a narrative to the entire thing. So just because it's an edited book does not mean that it does not have to tell a story. It does not mean that it does not have to have an input of, okay, what came first and then what is going to happen now and what will come further. So the sections, actually we kept developing them, in fact refining them, I would say. Even the very term we use for that, like the timeless in the modern or whatever, unfortunately both of us happen to be perfectionists, which gets really painful for both of us because if one of us gets stuck on something कि ये ठीक नहीं लग रहा, तो we will keep harping on it, debating on it, and sometimes we even know that the other person may not even notice it. The reader may not even notice that this caption is so apt, or oh my god, this section seems so well made or whatever. I'm so glad that you noticed it. But when we were doing it, we were not very sure that people would notice the kind of effort that went into structuring all these diverse voices so that it's almost like an orchestra. You have so many voices, and to make sure it's not noise, it's not clutter, and it becomes a very beautiful kind of a symphony with some parts to it, kind of thing. So that is, I think, what we were trying to do. And I think also because, like Nehru said about Chandigarh, that, the good thing about Chandigarh is that it hits you on the head and it makes you think. I think this is what we were trying to do with this book, that we did not just want people to go through, okay, this is what William Curtis said, okay, so this is what Mr. Doshi said. We wanted them to be able to see the larger picture and to see all these diverse voices, because it is not just like, as I said, we are not just trying to praise Corbusier or, say, oh, Chandigarh is the best city ever. We are not doing that. We are actually offering the reader as diverse an experience of Chandigarh as possible, from a city which, how it started to where it is heading to, what are the problems, take a very honest look at what this whole smart city thing is all about, was the garden city even successful? What is the symbolism behind the capital? So in this one book, actually, you get such a diverse overview of Chandigarh, and that is what the aim was. But still, you are able to make these verticals, and specifically, I think, as I said, maybe as academicians, we were very clear that we wanted that kind of a clarity in the book, that there should be many voices, but there should be some kind of a structuring of the book, which actually people could pick. Okay, maybe I want to concentrate more on this aspect and not on that aspect.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yes. Some
Because
more
then
insights would
no,
always
no,
be
no, no,
welcome. Yeah.
no, no. Yeah, the same, the structuring thing. You see, to sort of re-amplify what Deepika has very beautifully said, that it's an orchestra. But first thing that makes it distinctly different than a history of, let us say, one was writing the making of Chandigarh, a book, or one was doing a book on Corbusier, just
Mhm.
then the linearity of time would become very important. If one was writing the history of Chandigarh, it would obviously begin with the idea of making the city, the partition, and then it will be on the scale of the time. And if one was just doing a book on Corbusier, that also would have the linearity of time to a very big important aspect. His facets will, different facets will be there. Uh, but time will, sequential time narrative will be very, very critical to hold it together. But actually, if you look in this book, it's the other way around. We are starting from the timelessness. We are not starting from, okay, it is like from the macro to the micro. We are first looking at the, you can say, the cosmic experience, which, or the ethereal experience, or the, music, the frozen music that Corbusier's work, resonates. We are first saying that his use of Beton brew is not this, but actually it evokes a primordial reflections or experiences in you. When you look at the rugged concrete, it is like almost molten rock of the 20th century. So you see, we first talk of the intangible aspects of the city and Corbusier's architecture. Then from there, we also talk about the big, Corbusier was a long strider, and except for the say for two continents, Australia and Antarctica, Arctic and Antarctica, he has a footprint in every other continent of the world. So there is no and there's no architect or planner. His projects may not have got realized, but in Russia, he has done something. He was invited. He did do something, and his engagement was there with all continents except these two. And so I think hardly any architect or planner would have such a huge, global impact. So that is one thing. And from the world, we come finally to Chandigarh, and then from Chandigarh, the various aspects of Chandigarh. So the moot point I have added to Deepika's, beautiful exposition is that here it's like a telescope view. We are starting from the whole, and then we are going to the, micro. That's another way of.
Mhm. Mhm. No, that gives a insight how very smoothly, although smooth, but I'm sure, as you say, it was a difficult process, as explained. The stitching was done, right, for the whole book and for the contents, you know. And you'd like to share any interesting anecdotes or some unforgettable real moment with the masters, whether you were getting the essays, because I know dealing with all of them not easy. Just by the way, was there any something unforgettable?
No, we want to remain popular with them. If we tell the नहीं, मगर एक चीज और, if you permit me, because before we leave the contents of the book, you see, now there are few telling pictures which have been used on the full spread, and they have they are not directly in the line of narrative. The moments which Deepika was saying, when the Modi decided to receive the Prime Minister, the French President, सारे हिंदुस्तान को छोड़ के वो जी को अहमदाबाद का झूला जलाया ना, वो मामलापुरम में, all type of India is full of great wonderful spaces. But for the French president, he chooses the piazza of the capital, the main piazza between the assembly and the high court. Because Prime Minister Modi had lived in Panchkula, he was very familiar. And he has mentioned that he used to go to the Capitol complex. He could see the power of urban space.
Yeah.
You see, we have to understand that we always think that अरे भाई politicians को architecture का क्या idea होता है, bureaucrat को क्या idea होता है, PGI के doctor को क्या समझ. It is not there. When there is something truly magnificent and powerful, it will connect. I don't think that there is modernism is abstract and people don't connect, and it is not that. If there is a power, if there is a, you can say a force, a divine force, it will be appreciated by some. And when he did his yoga, how many, about 20, 10,000, 15,000, I forget the number. 15,000 people doing yoga of all these spaces. He repeats that piazza. So, and then that third picture, which we put double spread, is in front of the enamel door of Corbusier's his own painting. The galaxy of all those people decide to pose. The photo of कभी कबूजियर ने सपने में नहीं सोचा होगा कि मेरी ये जो पेंटिंग के सामने इतनी बड़ी, they thought that is where they would like to pose. So these three pictures, and of course the moment at UNESCO, that is the aha moment. But the power of architecture, the power of art in architecture, the power of scale in architecture transcends historicity and modernism.
In
Yes,
fact,
I guess.
to add to that, just a little, जो आप कह रहे थे ना about transcending, I have met some people who are not architects, not related to architecture or urban planning or whatever, just normal people. Someone is a businessman, someone is a doctor, as you were saying, and they have actually bought this book and read it. And that actually feels very good, because actually what we are trying to go beyond, we are trying to go beyond architecture also. We are trying to go beyond architects, and it was very heartening to know that they not just bought the book, they read it and they appreciated it, and they were able to relate to it, because they said all these essays, none of them seems to be very like technical, and we took care of that. We took care of the language, we took care that, in fact, we always had in our mind our target end user, for example, would be a normal person or a student of architecture. It was never meant a book by the intellectuals for the intellectuals or something like that. So that was very heartening, that many people who are not into architecture, but who have as Professor Vatas was saying, that it relates to all of us. That was very heartening, that people have read it and they really appreciated it and they could understand what was being told.
I think his question
Absolutely.
was, we have sidetracked his trickier part of this question. He said that what were the awkward moments or memorable moments? The trick, I think we
Now,
shouldn't.
Professor Wattas is adding a new dimension.
No,
Yeah.
no, because
But
I think
yes,
we'll not shy away from that,
yes,
because it's all in good, in good spirit, and there is always some memorable moment, and we took. I will let Deepika tell her, unforgettable moment during the making of the book, and I will. So I think Deepika, you should tell where.
See, awkward, I would not say awkward, but the biggest challenge that we face, it seems like editing, in fact, seems okay, you just collect some essays or whatever. The bigger challenge is to resist the temptation to temper the essays as per what you want them to be, to accept that everyone has a different way of writing and a different way of talking. Okay, so for example, when you talk of Professor Doshi, he talks a lot in not in a normal like a writing that you would have. It would be use-ended sentences which could end anywhere, it could start anywhere, it could start with something like that. He has a very meandering kind of a way of talking. Some people are in fact the opposite, they're too direct and it's too clinical and it's too just stating facts, and it actually sounds very dry. So you have to gently push people towards, maybe doing that, but not overdo it, because you ultimately want a varied expression in all of these essays. You don't want all of them to sound like they've come from the same source, but at the same time, you have to somehow, and it gets a little awkward sometimes when you have to tell someone, ki, I'm sorry, sir, but you'll have to curtail it, or you'll have to leave out this point. This doesn't, people will not be able to relate to it, what you are saying. They'll not be able, because the backstory is so huge that they will not be able to understand what you're saying. So it did become awkward at some times, awkward in the sense that we didn't know whether we should do it or not. But then we said, okay, let's take a chance. And we were lucky that most of the people understood what we were trying to do. They did not resist. They did not hold it against us that why are you telling, and how dare you tell me what to do, how dare you tell me that I should delete this or add this kind of a thing. So that was a good thing, but initially we were very hesitant, and we almost felt that, oh my god, we're going to lose a contributor for sure. They're going to say, no, no, this is not done, you can't tamper with my essay, or you can't do that, you can't make it fit into a narrative kind of a thing. But that was a little tricky. But the good memory was that after each milestone, after we achieved everything, Professor Vattas would treat us to a party, okay, in his house. And we would either get lychee ice cream or mango ice cream, and his cook makes amazing cake. So we had good times also. So for every, when we accomplished a certain goal, he would treat us all to some goodie like that. So that was a good working experience, of course.
No, that I agree with you. It's not easy, sort of, really trying to edit or make suggestions to quality writing of that stature that you have captured. You see, but I think end of the day, if you were able to sort of modulate and mold here and there wherever required, because that's the job, difficult job of the editors, and you have to do it with a pinch of salt, which you have done it, kind of. But it'll also be good to know how easy or how difficult is it to co-edit collectively, two people, for example. So, what was the experience, because these are, you land up with touchy situations at times, interpretations and a stream of thought. And so how was it?
You have seen the inside of Punjab Assembly in session. Huh? Well, we didn't have chappals flying around, but there were plenty of sparring moments. And it is not only the two of us, we had two young research assistants with us, whom we have credited. And being a very democratic teamwork thing. They also were very vociferous, vocal, and sometimes, like any good family, there were heated debates sometimes over. So, you have not slept well one day, and next morning, you also tend to be grumpy, and ye bhi nahi hua, wo bhi nahi. So this is all part and parcel of. But I can say that my cook, Beer Singh, as he makes very churns out very good cakes and very good coffee. It can put coffee cafe day out of business. So the cakes and coffee, and my wife would always, before they were to come, Mridula would say, भाई बच्चे आ रहे हैं, उनकी फेवरेट दीपिका खाती है लीची आइसक्रीम, श्वेता खाती है स्ट्रॉबेरी आइसक्रीम, तुम खाते हो बटर स्कॉच during the summer months. So what she would quietly do is order all of them. And so the ice creams, food works. I can tell you that food works.
To
Food
keep the
works and resolve.
companionship going.
Yeah, yeah, teamwork. But Suneet, you have been asking us a lot of trick questions. I want to ask you also.
You're
Deepika,
most
I think we should turn the tables now. We have talked enough of the book. I want to ask you.
Before you do that, I will also tell
Okay,
you.
okay, okay. You go first. You go first.
This is
Yeah.
a question which gets asked quite a lot, that how do you co-edit? In fact, I would have been very scared of editing anything on my own. And I think having a second opinion, for everything, whether it is, because we have written a lot ourselves also. It's not just like we have essays from other people. We also wrote a lot about the symposium and other things also, whatever. In fact, I think it is always better to have a co-editor, because sometimes, as I said, everyone has a very unique perspective of looking at things. whether it is the visuals, whether it is the narrative, whether it is the text itself. And in fact, I think we were able to do, it's almost like a double sieve. You know, you have to filter something out. So, a double sieve works better than a single sieve kind of a thing. One person may start getting exhausted. You may start getting, okay, now it's enough of it. So, I think in fact, it worked very well. In fact, on the other hand, I would say that either of us alone, because it's a very funny thing that when the symposium started, Professor Vattas was meant to be just an advisor. He was just meant to tell the administration, okay, these are the people, ये इनके phone number है, ये इनका email ID है, इनको contact करो और आप अपना symposium करवा लो. I was just a teacher in the college. I was in fact one of the junior ones, kind of a thing, nothing to do with that. But I don't know how it happened. We got so engrossed in the whole thing, and then I think because we'd already authored a book together, we did realize that we are somehow able to work together very well. We both have our own strengths, and we both have our own eccentricities, but on the other hand, we sort of fuel each other by that. Like as I said, we both have this very bad habit of being perfectionists. That helps, because ultimately Professor Vattas knows कि अगर मैं किसी चीज को object कर रही हूँ, it is not out of ego, it is not out of कि मेरे को करवाना ही ऐसा है, it is for the larger picture, for the bigger thing kind of thing. And same, I understand his concern. So
So, so,
sometimes
so
something may not seem important to me, it may not seem very very relevant कि इसका इतना इस पे क्यों ध्यान देना है, but I will play along because I know that next time when I get stuck on something, he will play along. Okay, so and it actually adds to the whole thing. So I in fact think that it was a good thing that we co-edited rather than either of us doing it on our own.
and at the end of the day, the fact that you're still friends means co-editing was a success. Yeah.
Very beautiful. I realized we are twinning actually today. We are both wearing the same sweater, which we happen to have. So we said, okay, you know, we are team together, so we work as a team very well. And in fact, after that also, we've been doing a lot of things. I mean, I think most of the events in the museum that I do, it's usually Professor Vattas is there as a part of it, and we keep writing articles or whatever. So we are still working together on many, many things together.
So that's so nice to know, and I look forward for more of this kind of a documentation and writings, and to capture the dynamics of a city like Chandigarh. Is never an easy task. You know, and talking about because you see, I mean, there is something as we were talking earlier. There is an inherent strong foundation to it. Now, whether as critics all over the world, the brutalist architecture also, as Corbusier has been sort of often talked about. Whether you see it here, these are issues of debate, and only time will say. But I would say that this was the only, and at least I have witnessed only one city of this kind since our independence, which has really given us something, the fodder to sort of debate, discuss, argue, get excited about in terms of town planning and urban planning. Unfortunately, there's hardly anything after Chandigarh that has come up which we can really talk about, because this we are talking about in the 60s that it took place, and now we are in the 21st century. But no city, and we have had so many states which have come up around, new states which have developed and evolved. But it's rather sad that we really cannot sort of name a particular city which was sort of envisaged, you know. And it's not to say that there is a dearth of talent or there's a dearth of ideas, but there is a lacuna somewhere which desperately needs to be filled up. And I think maybe this is one way of filling up that lacuna, having books of this nature, you know, having books of this nature. When people sort of go through it, that's where our bureaucracy also sees the making of a city. So how it is and what is involved. In the recent times, we are seeing some progressive developments that are taking place. But one thing very exciting also in this book is then you also have related it to the beyond aspect of Chandigarh, and that's where Jagan Shah, the essay by Jagan Shah, he sort of goes into deep analysis of the whole content, the grid formations, etc., and the rigidity that how it can be carried forward. When I say rigidity in the plan, in fact, it just comes to me on the lighter side that once our late master architect Charles Correa when he was talking about Chandigarh. He lightheartedly said that, well, this is a city, the sectors, it's a city that they're all in burqa because
Zanana,
apparently Janana, so they are in
Zanana city,
burqa,
he called
Janana
it.
city, absolutely, that they are in burqa kind of because the sector houses are facing the other side and not facing properly the main street or the market, etc., etc. So these kind of discourses, I think this city has brought out amongst the best of us. And very good, useful essay again by Rahul Malhotra in the end, which you have captured. I'm sure not easy because I've been getting all this. He looks at the evolution process with a more humane aspect. You see,
Hmm.
more culturally dominated, cultural dynamics, taking those aspects in mind and then bringing up that. I don't know in today's world, the 21st century, whether we as a society actually would really accept a plan of this nature with those kind of that kind of regimentation, you know, because people in Chandigarh, the few that I talk, residents, etc., you know it better. There's also been a sense that the city is. We really don't know. When I was 8 years old, I saw the same thing. When I was 12 years old, I see the same thing. When I'm 25, I see the same. When I'm 45, I mean, a city's evolution process, but it's a heritage city. We have to sort of take care, preserve experimental city, experiment that was done, which is very successful at one level. But these debates are always going to be there, and I think we need more of documentation of this nature for us also then to analyze, and talking about documentation, I think it is also something that really, I mean, we have had in the recent times, our great architects, Raj Rival, Doshi, Christopher, talking the discourse, But we need more of the younger generation also coming up, picking up the cudgels. You see, and I don't know, I'm just putting out this thought, doing some loud debate, thinking process. Should writing be understood? I mean, the very meaning of writing, the way it is interpreted today, for example, in the Indian context I talk, you pick up a newspaper, it is more talking about decor. I bring it to that level now. I mean, when somebody says I'm writing for a newspaper, you'll find that he or she, an architect also at times, would be focusing on the decor or interior designs and things like that. The very definition of critical writing, does it need to be brought in? Because you see, the language of architecture in lines is equally as important as it is in the written word, I think. In today's world, more so. And a majority of in the online that we see, documentation is being talked about, etc., etc. But these aspects, do you feel that they should be brought in right from the grassroots levels in our schools so that it's understood by the students and carried forward?
Uh, there are two. I think you made a very important point, and that's where our country is lagging behind. Uh, Till recently, one of the first schools of architecture to offer, introduce the subject of, it was titled Architectural Journalism in the Chandigarh College of Architecture. And but I have personally have serious objections to the term
Hmm.
journalism, architectural journalism, because journalism tends to has a connotation of Indian Express pulling out some scoop and some political controversy. The more important thing is that it should be architectural critical appraisal, architectural discourse, and almost most of the important newspapers, leaving aside magazines in the developed world, like New Yorker had Paul Goldberger as its architectural critic for years, and he is a professor of architecture and marvelous, essays. Similarly, New
Hmm.
York Times, even now, during COVID, has been bringing out. So, what unless We come out of our elite, ivory towers. Yeah, a profession has every profession tends to become very incestuous. It's like, we are creating buildings and structures which are, laudatory and which are criticized within the fraternity. But architecture is the biggest spectacle of the cities. It is the biggest art form. It impacts everyone's life more than any other, you know uh, mm, yeah, a dam will be somewhere out there in the hills, and it will, of course, channelize water, or a hydroelectric project, or a thermal power plant, or a nuclear infrastructure. But architecture is something which is not only functional, it it interacts with us at an emotional level, and so there are it is such an important part, yet the discourse is not done in the mainstream magazines and newspapers. And the schools of architecture have only, I think, I'm very proud that Apurva, our young CCA product, has taken to, she interned with you, Suneet, and you are one of the first architectural editors. So I'm not going into the history of architectural magazine journals in India, but it is, as much books are important, so is every newspaper or every mainstream publication. Should be, where a new building is coming up, let us say in Jalandhar, Ludhiana, or why should it not? You have art reviews, you have music reviews. Why should there not be an architectural review in a mainstream? Vernacular papers are read much more. We find that Bhaskar over here covers architectural happenings more than the English medium. So I think an outreach by future architects, young architects, besides doing the work in reaching out through mainstream newspapers, mainstream media, in reviewing new happenings in the city, in reviewing where they can take any position. But I think unless we will make our voices heard, we will always remain marginalized. We have to
Absolutely.
make our, so it's a very important role that architectural academia is, is almost, you can say, made to order. We are, our role is to think, and it doesn't debar anybody else also. But architectural reviewing is, and critical reviewing is very, very important. I can only one like to share, I hope you permit me 30 seconds more. Way back in 1990, there was the World Congress of Architecture at Montreal. They had a excellent session, besides, this building and this project. And they had one session called the worst realization of the year. And there was an award for it. Can you believe today that any architect, there would be one critic who would go, and uh, blow that building or that piece of architecture, and really blow it to smithereens
Oh,
as
oh,
something
yeah,
nonsensical.
yeah.
And I can even tell you which building it was. It was the Canadian Center for Civilization in Ottawa. I had seen that, luckily. And the defending on the other side of the table is the architect who had designed it, who said, "No, you have got it wrong. It is of great, realization." So, what I am saying, the discourse can be critical, opposing, and the designer doesn't have to get touchy. He was very much there at the cocktails. Everyone was a friend. So, idea is not that you are a political enemy. Idea is that, are we refining our sensitivities, our judgments of architecture, our experience? Are we refining it? The role of great art or great architecture is to, sort of elevate people's response to the most important, spectacle of the city or of the built world. So I feel I really implore all, if there are some young people listening to this, please go out and write an essay. on whatever you want to do.
I agree absolutely with you. We need more of healthy criticism. We need more satire. We need more humor in architecture to come forward and surface, because architecture is just not only a one-tracked affair. It's a holistic affair, exposure. It's a holistic development of a personality, and the written word, documentation, and writing plays a great role. I think we have already overshot our time, if I'm not mistaken, before we really sort of are given a bang somewhere. Uh, uh, Nandan, if you're there, are we okay with time? It's been a
Yeah, we
pleasure.
could. I
Yeah,
think it
it's been.
was
Thank you for this opportunity, and a pleasure talking with you, Professor Wattis. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think it was a wonderful conversation from an editorial point of view, especially for young aspiring architects who wish to kind of design or compose a book on a theme as complex as Chandigarh, which has multiple interpretations. And I think bringing together a book with uh, serious scholars who have also been practitioners, like Professor B.V. Doshi, uh, Rahul Mehrotra, William Curtis, and a whole host of these authors. I hope at some point in time, this book can also, in this context, open up into a 1 day or a 2 day symposium of each of the authors presenting live on a digital platform again. And because then it would kind of lend itself to, uh, as if the book is also unfolding uh, on a digital platform with a direct conversation. So there were just a few questions that have, one or two questions that have come up, and maybe I would raise it for Vatash and Deepika ji, and Sunit Paul ji can also respond on that. Uh, the thought that uh, having seen that this symposium has come, and I think in our earlier conversations, there was this idea that what is it of Chandigarh that is valuable uh, for the future? And I think because generally when we talk of Chandigarh and we talk of UNESCO and heritage, we seem to be going backwards often. And we think of the past, we glorify the past, we end up glorifying Corbusier's work, which of course is timeless. But I think if we can relook, since it's talking of rediscovering Chandigarh, if we can summate it and close the conversation with the future, and which becomes a bridge to carry this conversation into the design studio of the various schools. Uh, could
Yeah.
we kind of have a closing small discussion on this? We've kind of run out of time, but I think we can extend it a little more on summation. And if we can sum it, what is it of the future? What can a young student in urban design look for in this book? If we can kind of sum it on that, then maybe in the next stage, when it goes down into the schools of architecture, the book itself can start becoming a certain discourse in the schools. So, Professor Bhattacharya, would you like to
yeah,
respond? And also,
because there'll be not only one answer to it, but one, two, three dimensions. So let me take up the biggest. You see, it's a irony of sorts that when Chandigarh was conceived, the worry was that will it be inhabited, and later on, now in the recent decade, Chandigarh's success, ironically, has also become the millstone in its neck. It has become the biggest problem that the city, as a product of human settlement, became so successful. There is an echo, that the the competitive political forces have thrown away the when Chandigarh was planned, there was a 16-kilometer uh, periphery. An act of parliament stipulated that 10 miles around it will be just for pastoral and agricultural kind of things, because they knew that the grid layout, the grid part of the city otherwise would be turning into cities on the edges tend to grow on their own with their own stream, just like Gurgaon. So they become conurbations which go on like an amoeba spreading, and then the whole idea of a planned city goes to for a six. But the big lesson to be learned is that I doubt very much if green cities of this scale will be replicated in India. Although the new state capital of Amravati did start off with a bang, but it is, there have been attempts to make new state capitals also. But one very important lesson to learn is that what is the limits to growth? And should the city be resilient enough to take on? You see, today the population of Chandigarh, a very conservative atmosphere estimate, is at least 14 lakhs, which is about 1.4 billion, and it was planned in the initially for 1.5 lakhs and then eventually for 5 lakhs, half a million. So when you have such a big, because once a city goes become so economically successful, then people will come. They find jobs here. It's a social equalizer. So a city as a all over the world, it has been found that urbanization is the biggest generator of economic, it's an engine of economic growth. And once that happens, the city keeps on growing and growing. So what do you do? The future of Chandigarh itself is, right now we are swamped by satellite towns on all the three sides, and it is only because a heritage city, the mountains are protected. So I think one of the biggest uh, challenges for Chandigarh is now that we are almost becoming like, you can say, a bit of Lutyens Delhi, all over, all around with the oceans of Gurgaons and Noidas and across Yamuna things. The ever expanding growth of the city will jeopardize any planned effort that you have. So I think the biggest worry right now Chandigarh is facing is unbridled growth. It's like a juggernaut which is rolling on all sides, and there is no political will to put a control to it. And the more moral question is that should it be stopped? There's another dimension. Every Indian has a right to find some place in it. So it can be a seminar by itself, that what do you do when when a settlement is very successful. So I'll just take this one major issue for the future.
Sure. Thank you. Deepika ji, would you like to give your point briefly, and then we can request Sunit Paul ji to. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, so I would specifically talk about what we have in the book and how it would enable students to make it a starting point, because we have a lot of architecture college students coming to the Corbusier Center and to the Architecture Museum. And I tell them that if you want, you can find at least 100 topics within Chandigarh right now to do your research on, or to I have like normally I negotiate with, not negotiate, in fact I collaborate with the teachers of the colleges, that what can we do when we come to Chandigarh for 3 days, 5 days, a week kind of a thing. So if I specifically talk of what you are saying, for example, the first chapter that we have, which is like Le Corbusier, the timeless in modern. Now, within this one vertical, you have so many other themes, like how does architecture become timeless? Okay, how do you balance out this modernity vis-a-vis timelessness? How do you balance heritage with progress? Okay, so that is one theme you get. You can take the example of Chandigarh and then project it onto other cities also. You could project it to the city you come from, maybe Bangalore, Pune, whatever. And because you have these things, like for example, when Mr. Doshi talks about the Indian incarnation, so, what does it mean? That how does modernity seep into India? How do we react to it? How do we imbibe it in our own structural system? That becomes another research altogether. Now, then the second thing, for example, Corbusier's imprint, India and beyond. Now, it's a very funny thing that as we keep saying that Corbusier had all these European ideas, he kept working on European cities all his life. And ironically, the one city where he was able to materialize everything was in India, the last place he would have thought. Then how does it have an impact outside? How is it? And of course, India was getting impacted by things which were happening outside. But how does India impact other things? How does Chandigarh impact other cities which went up or which came up, or even the housing or the civic architecture that came up after that? That becomes another track of research altogether. Then this very interesting thing of Chandigarh's heritage is world heritage. It's a very hard concept to understand. When I came to know about this concept of world heritage, I asked my teacher, how does a jungle in Africa with some cave paintings or something like that, how does it impact me? How does it become my heritage? Because when you say world heritage, it means something which relates to all humanity. If you read the definition of that, something which impacts all humanity. Now, how does that jungle in the savannah somewhere or some temple in Cambodia somewhere, how does it become my heritage? How does it become world heritage? So that is again a very interesting theme, that this whole collective conscience that we talk about, this whole growth of human civilization, how we all impact each other along the way, that becomes another parallel or another vertical on which a student could study that what is actually heritage, what is this concept of heritage. Then this chapter on garden city to smart city. Well, I, in fact, once wrote an article that Chandigarh born smart, which actually got some praise and some brickbats also, that Chandigarh was already born smart. In fact, we made it a little dumb over the years, and now we're again trying to make it smart again because it already had those things. So, as a student, or as a studio, you could actually see what was there embedded in the DNA of the city itself, that it exceeded the expectations of everyone, and it is still holding up after 70 years. Nowadays, you make one highway or one flyover, and within 5 years, it sort of doesn't work anymore, or a roundabout doesn't work anymore. This city has worked for 70 years. So, starting from the inception to the present and to the future of it. So basically, how do you take an idea and take it forward? How does it fit in now? How does it fit in? Like now, everyone wants a garden city post Corona, post the pandemic. Everyone is talking about garden cities, and we already have it. So that would be very interesting. That how can we make your present city on the basis of a garden city? What can you do about it? And of course, when we talk of the archives, what is very important, we architects live in our own ivory towers, maybe, or in our own silos. We don't realize the impact of the bureaucracy. We don't realize how important is sociology, the economy, what all factors go into the making of a new city. When I have students of urban planning come to the Corbusier Center, when I give them a lecture on the making of Chandigarh, I tell them the sad part is that we don't take into consideration many other things which were taken into consideration in Chandigarh. So Chandigarh has so much to offer, from its idea itself, that how can one visionary prime minister decide, I want to make a new city, to the bureaucrats who translate it, to a designer who comes and then makes the city, and then Indian team which takes it forward. So I think what you were asking, that within this book, you could find at least, if not more, 30, 40 topics of research within this book, you could find them.
Thank you. Thank you on that. Sunit, Paulji, would you like to sum and close this, and then maybe we can, if you'll have something more, you can, but otherwise we could close this and open it some other day, continue this theme, because this is really a theme which cannot be completed, so to say, in a single session. So we can always keep it open-ended, take it down to schools, have conversations with different schools who are interested, and with different urban design studios. So Sunit Paulji, I would request you for the closing, and then we can, I would kind of close the evening.
Sunit, you are mute.
Yeah, on mute.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Just one sentence, just to cap it off, and that was that I think it's very important. Just Lutyens Delhi also, since there was a mention, even that is now very sensitively being looked at and being changed, wherever required per se. So a change with time, with evolution, sensitively the way it is looked at, respecting heritage. I think is one dimension that we have to keep in mind. But that apart, as you said, we need to close up, and the opportunity given today by the council with Nandan, I must appreciate the passion and hard work. I understand that goes into the making of such events. But I think it's all worth it because we are all working collectively as a team, as professionals, and it has indeed been a nice, cheerful chat that we have had, and an enjoyable one at that. So thank you for this opportunity. Uh, you know,
Thank you. So on this note, I would like to thank Professor Vatas ji, Deepika ji, and architect Sunit Paul for a wonderful conversation of delving into making of a book. And as Sunit Paul ji rightly said, the design of a book. And I think it was from an editorial point of a content that many of us know in different ways. But I think the fact that a symposium could get translated into a book was one stage. And I think with the council platform, and thanks to the president and the entire council team, I think there's now a possibility of a forum where a book can actually re-engage or percolate or start a conversation with the design studio, especially the urban design and dissertation of young students, as well as at a master's and maybe at a PhD level as well. And so this platform is really for that. So we have kept an open request to schools who are interested in engaging with this. We've already got about 10 schools who have responded and who are keen to engage. Uh, Thank you again for that wonderful conversation, which is actually it's a beginning of a certain sort. While we end the program here, it's really a beginning of a certain sort of the next stage. I would like to state that as part of this urban process, tomorrow we have Professor Sanjeev Vidyarthi speaking from the University of Chicago. So he's coming live from the US on another book that talks about urban planning and urban design from 1947 till today. So it of course includes Chandigarh, but it also looks at this whole panorama of from a socialist state, which again Chandigarh encapsulates in a certain way, to this neoliberal post-capitalist society, and then attempts to break these labels that we start attaching to cities, because cities eventually are so complex that we cannot label them as easily as we would like to label. And on that note, we will close. I once again would like to thank the speakers, the participants who have logged in with so many questions. We're going to collate the questions and open it up for the Urban Design Studio. And a special thanks to President Habib Khan for facilitating all this, Sapna ji for bringing this conversation and inviting Vatas ji and Vista ji here for this conversation, and the COA Social Reads team, and of course the council team working around the corner, because as you rightly said, organizing the Zoom, getting it live stream, getting the posters out, there's architect Sandeep and many others, the TRC architect Professor Jayashree, who's also, they're all behind the scenes helping this whole endeavor, otherwise it cannot happen. And thanks to Apurva ji for kind of being the Chandigarh element of the introduction as well. So on that note, I think we will close. Thank you again, Vatas.
Just I
Sure,
want
sure.
Nandan, I want to use your medium to convey one request to the council.
Sure.
I'll tell you what. The council has undergone a Cinderella transformation with the recent, change of guard. And wonderful things like today evening is happening, and so every Saturday there is something exciting happening. But I may say, with the privilege of my age, that the Journal of Council of Architecture used to be a very sad story. A very pathetic I don't want to sort of sound harsh. I hope the new team will start bringing out the Journal of Council of Architecture, worth holding with pride in the world globally. Yes, sir, India is the happening place for architecture, and it should also, council should also consider occasionally bringing out seminal books. We should not be only, so, if you can take this darkhast from me, this petition to the council executive and the president and the vice president, we will, I think, REBA does so many things. I mean, it is all Chicago Architectural Fund. Council of Architecture must also do these things.
So,
You have
with,
added
if I can respond, while one fully accepts what you are saying, I know it's a little risky to say this, but I think on this note we have to say that eventually it is an expression of what a practice, profession, and academia is. So to make a distinction between council and the practicing architect and the university, I think, and there has been a tendency to expect everything to be done by the council. And I think what has happened in this present condition is, of course, a certain leadership value which has emerged in the last 1 year with the new president and the team coming in. But at the same time, there is a request that practicing architects, schools of architecture, young architects, I think we are all equally um, we're all equally in this process, And so I think if that can, because I know from both sides, you attempt to open a journal and you explain rightly the difficulties in that book with some of the most scholarly authors, and you open a journal, and I'm sure architect Sunit Paul also understands those complexities, that it is not easy to get critical content to make a journal, and which is why this initiation has begun now, and the council felt that this has to begin now in this way. The journal is really an outcome of these kind of processes, and I think even journals and magazines in India today, with all the good intention, face this challenge because it is not that easy to get critical articles to be published, and for various reasons. This is not about blaming. This is about really looking at the larger firmament, to look at the larger context. And I think if we are in this together, rather than saying it's the council's responsibility or the fraternity's responsibility or the university's responsibility, I think this is what the present council's engagement has been, and that we look at the broader firmament. And I'm sure Sunit Paulji will also he's been at the helm of a magazine, a journal, which has kind of captured the imagination of the practice, and it's not been, I doubt it has been such an easy journey, to even put together an essay or to say a theme or on a city. And so I would like to broaden this. I agree that we can pointedly look at some journal and say it should be better, or I agree on that idea. But I think I would also like to, in this, because it's a national forum and it's going across the world, we have people logged in from Southeast Asia, we have people logged in from South Africa here. I think it is really a moment of reflection to the entire fraternity, to the schools of architecture, to the students, to begin this new kind of investigation, because this time now in quarantine has really given us that moment to think hard. It is not giving us any more luxuries that we had with the neoliberal world. And so every resource counts, everything we do begins to count. And I think it's in this light that the COA Reads has opened up.
Yeah.
And I would like to reframe that. I would like to reframe it because I think we need to look at the broader context in which something emerges, not just what emerged. And if we think we can look at that broader context, collaborate, uh, and kind of share through that, bring together a certain critical discourse, but also create the soil for that critical discourse. I may have the best seeds, and as a gardener, if I plant those best seeds in the desert, which has no fertility or no soil, I think those seeds won't grow. So I think it's about a context. It's about how that context grows. And your suggestions are taken with the right spirit. But I would suggest that we all look at this as a collective
Yeah.
responsibility rather than the councils alone. And the council is, of course, supportive and facilitative. REBA can do it also because the architects involved in it in the normal practice are able to engage in it in a certain way, the institutions, universities. And I think that's happening now in India. It's happening in India. It's growing. And we found a great support of schools now willing to engage with this. So I hope that kind of broadens the question you raised, Vatesh. So if we can close, or is there any closing comment, or we can close on?
So I think it's been a very wonderful exercise, and I'm sure our audience also has been enlightened. People, no matter Chandigarh has been there for a long time, the book is there. But each time you talk about a city like that, it brings in a new dimension, a new vision, and you start reassessing. And so good that the council has taken up the cudgels now, at the helm being President Habib being there, you know. So look forward to such more programs and such more initiatives. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
So
you
on
very
that
much.
wonderful note, I think we can close.
Yeah.
Thank you again, and thank you to all the participants and architects and faculty and students who joined in, not only from India, but from Southeast Asia. We are from Sri Lanka and many other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, Durga. Good night.
Good night.
Good.
Thank you.